Working in Connecticut was great. The infamous Black Lodge, the little horror commune. An old garage, yeah, it was quickly converted into my on-set shop. But it was really cool. It became home. You know, the first couple of days I was like getting used to it, and then I found myself like I found myself in there constantly. You know, but it was yeah, it was like an old dilapidated garage. You know, like the wood was caving in on the roof, and it was definitely rustic, but it added to the whole experience.
My most enjoyable times on set were when we were doing that kind of the really hard stuff. You know, getting pulled out of stuff and thrown around. That was like the best part of the whole thing. Well, the most horrible thing was when we had to do the smashing of the window in the Peugeot. And I had been down in holding for most of the day, and everybody had been up on set shooting, and I didn't know it, but Paul, the stunt coordinator, had been put into makeup for Smiler, which of course involved this huge set of teeth so he couldn't talk at all. And I came up on set, and I'm all ready to go. I'm, you know, getting excited to get this window smashed on me. And I walk up to Paul, and I say, "Okay, Paul, what do I need to know for this window smashing thing? I'm very nervous about it." And he starts to describe it, and I can't understand a word he says. It's like he has marbles in his mouth. And he holds up his finger, and he runs away. And I'm like terrified at this point. And he comes back, and he's nodding his head, and he gives me this slip of paper. And it has all the various ways that sugar glass can cut me in the face and harm me like real glass, and how I should close my eyes and not breathe through my mouth, and make sure I cover my head, and watch out where he grabs me on the arms, because it really can cut like real glass. And I'm standing there with a sheet of paper thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna die. The first one smashed, and then I was like, yeah, that was kind of awesome, let's do that again.
Lindsay, that performance was insane. I remember people on set like looking around during that performance, and people were like covering their mouths and like, you know, like looking around like, is this okay? Is this, you know, it like, she made it seem like she was taking that hubcap in the face, you know, spitting the blood and choking and out of it. I mean, it was disgusting.
I remember Tate coming up to me midway through this progression of blood that was happening, and I'm in hysterics and, you know, in the middle of this really terrible moment, and he's standing over me, gently putting these globs of blood on my face, saying, "Man, that was just awesome, you spit that blood like 4 feet in the air, that's going on my reel."
Nails herself had this eerie, like, kind of like serpentine kind of motion. She was, the thing about Amy is like, she has these long arms and legs, you know what I mean? And like when she moves almost like seductively, but she has, you know, these jowls, and you know, it was a really uncomfortable scene. And I think that's why it was so successful.
It is the first film that I was involved with that had excessive special effects.
I wanted to make sure that all the deaths were unique, certainly in my experience.
Every effect was really a standalone, distinctive. It was all very stylized, well thought out. I was really excited to pull off each one of those kills. I remember when I got the email, and I opened the script up and I read through it. I remember thinking, first off, that this was going to be insane.
Look out!
It was so heavy a workload each day. That was a bit unexpected.
Pretty much all the night scenes we had to be bloody for. I think that James probably had it the worst.
Working with special effects makeup is sticky.
This poor guy got like every possible maim and cut and slash. I've never seen anyone get more tortured in a film.
I'm trying to keep track of what stage of decimation I was at.
That wound I got to know intimately. I was just like a nice grazing, swollen, nasty, dangling shotgun blast.
So there was an awful lot of discussion about this dangle of flesh that had to be put on in exactly the same spot every night, and doused in blood and checked for its dangliness was the final makeup check. You know, people would come up with a paintbrush and just check that it was wobbling correctly.
I don't know, Rosemary.
And James really liked to come back with his full makeup on. Like, he preferred that, and then he would eat breakfast with his full makeup, and there were kids there at the hotel, like little kids with their parents, and I remember one kid saying, "Mommy, Mommy, like, what happened to his face?"
I just remember that first rush of like, Molly's totally gonna kill this guy, and she's scared, and she's, you know, like, what the hell is going on? But she just like, you know, I don't know. It was great. My first kill was awesome.
Action!
That was the most blood I've ever seen out of a slit throat. And leave it to David to just let the coverage roll. You know, it's like, how long is this guy going to bleed? He's still bleeding. He's bleeding. It's bleeding. Now it's bleeding more. He's still bleeding. He's almost dead. Choke. Bleeding. Bleeding. Dead.
I loved it. I loved doing it, which sounds so bad, and I didn't know that I would get a thrill out of it.
Oh, that was my favorite. I loved that. I loved, like, I liked anything to do with a sickle.
Left side, front and back window.
The notion of doing the kids, which were not going to be like zombie looking. They're not going to be rotting flesh and bloody gory faces. I specifically wanted them to still, you know, look childlike. I didn't want them to be supernatural in any way.
Dave once said to me at one point that it was sad and tragic what had happened to these kids, and he wanted that to come through.
We were definitely talking the whole time through pre-production, working on the look of the characters, the kids, like especially the character of Jowls, and like, you know, getting the appropriate like jiggle.
It was very important for me that when she hit, that the actual chin were actually wiggling.
The problem is, once you get them into makeup, they're not like a seasoned actor that's going to go sit in a fan and read a newspaper and relax. They're running, chasing each other, shoving Twinkies in their face, and like, so as soon as you get this batch of kids out and get a new batch in, you turn around and you see a nose hanging off, or like a face hanging off, or paint smeared, and you're just like, oh my God, how is this going to be possible? Basically just chasing kids with paintbrushes and making sure that when David yelled action, that it wasn't smeared anymore.
Action!
I actually, each kid I gained a lot of love for. You know, by the end of it, you know, I'm sitting, you know, in makeup with these kids for hours at a time every day. Hit and miss with some of the parents, but most of the parents were really cool and accepting of me poking and prodding, and there's no real kind way to explain it. It's, I'm covering your child's face with material and then putting cement on top of that. You know, it's, trust me, please.
Surprising just how many families were willing to basically agree on day one to let their kids be a part of a horror movie, A, and B, you know, be working nights on school nights. I mean, I believe Derek, the producer, told them that it was going to be mainly weekends, but there was a possibility there may be a Sunday in there, that kind of thing. And but the parents, because it wasn't, they weren't used to having films there, they were like, sure, this will be fun, you know. And sure enough, that's how the kids ended up looking at it. There was maybe 1 or 2 occasions where parents kind of revolted and were like, this is getting silly, it's 4 in the morning, we need to get the kids home. But for the most part, that was not the case at all.
They would never bitch. They would spend 2 hours in makeup and this elaborate mask and prosthetic on their face, and have to be in the works, and the wardrobe was like wool, and it was like the most uncomfortable clothing, and they were so excited just to be in the film.
I just finished playing a plague kid.
They were all psyched to go to high school or elementary school the next day and tell all their friends about, you know, these amazing, I got to cut someone's head off last night. You know what I mean? Who gets to say that?
Here she comes.
So then there came the moment where we had to cast Rosemary. And this was something that David had always instilled with me, that it has to be perfect. And we were casting children out of Connecticut, and this very beautiful young girl comes in, Kate Aspinwall. Long story short, she was perfect. And David thought she was perfect. And we got into a debate about whether a 13, 14-year-old girl should play such a sexualized role. Because the whole notion behind Rosemary is that the grandmother wants her to be deflowered.
You'll be happy to know that she's of that age.
And it went on, and everybody, of course, everybody had their 2 cents worth, and David and I were just looking at each other going, we found our Rosemary, and there ain't nobody gonna get in between us and our Rosemary.
I would say the most striking thing about the finished look of Rosemary to me when I first saw the footage was how sort of hauntingly beautiful Rosemary was. Definitely the pick of the litter in PLAGUETOWN. You know, if I were a young Plague guy, I would definitely be asking her to the Plague prom.
All of the characters were so freakish, except for her. And she's the one that everyone talks about, the icon of the picture. She was, I don't know, the minimalism of her is what made her so scary.
She knows her way around despite being blind, so she doesn't need to be going as slowly as she does. And I don't know how much of that was worked out between her and David, how much of that was her own work, but the way she did it was phenomenal. That slow movement as she found her way around everywhere, inside, outside. There's a beautiful shot where she's walking out of the gingerbread cottage, just following off into where Robin's run off to. I thought that movement was phenomenal when I was watching her do it, and then it went red on screen, just so wow.
She has such grace and such poise in an environment that's so violent and cruel.
I always wanted a lot of this violence to be beautiful. I love the contradiction there, that this is, oh, isn't this nice that they're having this little sewing circle, as we got to call it, you know, all these young children just sitting there playing. But what they're doing is like just as nasty as I could possibly imagine.
Yeah, that was disturbing. That was messed up. In fact, the first take, I remember when we pushed the blood out for his eye sockets, it went all over the director and the cameraman. It just like completely sprayed him, which of course David, being the gore hound he was, instead of being mad, he was just grinning like, ah, I got sprayed.
Okay.
At that point, everyone was like in that mid to end production, sleep deprivation, like horror movie dementia, you know what I mean? We were all a little bit crazy, and I remember thinking at one point, I'm like just watching Robin hanging up there, and you know, in between takes he's smiling and talking and like dancing and like big smile, bloody eyes. And you know, there's kids running around with sticks and pine cones, and it was just one of those like, wow, where the hell am I moments, you know what I mean? It was really surreal.
The bridge scene was kind of scary because I think we were all so exhausted, and David just wanted to get the scene, and he was just like, just really do it, just really, like, you're punching her, like, really attack her, and I was like, ow, like, they're really attacking me now. As long as it looked good, it's cool.
I felt very lucky throughout, and it was very easy for me to commit myself wholeheartedly to doing the best that I could do in that environment.
I was kind of surprised about how great it was. It was fun as an actor to be in the middle of something that you don't, you know, those extremes that you don't normally get to experience. You know, everybody always pulls you back from those kind of extremes as an actor. And it was great to just kind of let loose and do that.
I had a friend who is very much into the universe and the world and how we exist and what we perpetuate into the world and what we give to the world and what we get back. And she had been great for Rosemary's mother. And she read the script and she called me and she said, Derek, this is too evil. It's too much against what I believe the goodness in the world is. And that's when I thought, hell yeah! We got a winner on our hands!